The carburetor was giving me grief at midnight, which seemed fitting. Nothing in my life worked right anymore, so why should a 2015 Ford engine be any different? I was elbow-deep in grease when Chloe's voice drifted through the heating vent from upstairs. "Mom, you have to delete that picture. Dad's not an idiot." I froze, wrench halfway to the intake manifold. My 17-year-old daughter's voice carried that tone she used when discussing my apparent shortcomings, which happened more often these days. Iris's reply came through crystal clear. "He's not even looking. He'd believe anything I told him." Well, at least I knew where I stood. Right under the bus, apparently. "I'm Kellan Brooks, 39 years old, owner of Brooks Auto Repair in Riverside, Maine. This town peaked sometime around 1987, when the paper mill still employed half the population. Now it's strip malls, empty storefronts, and people like me trying to squeeze a living from whatever's left. My wife Iris is a lawyer, ambitious, sharp, and lately about as warm as a January morning in Bangor. She's been working late more often, buying expensive jewelry and making new friends. The kind of friends who drive leased Teslas and wear cologne that costs more than my monthly insurance payment. I wiped my hands on a shop rag and climbed the stairs to our bedroom. Iris was already asleep, or pretending to be. On her nightstand sat a sapphire necklace I'd never seen before. "Where'd this come from?" I asked the next morning, holding up the jewelry. Iris barely looked up from her coffee. "My sister sent it. Early birthday gift." "Janet? Since when does Janet send expensive jewelry?" "Since she got that promotion. Don't be so suspicious, Kellan. It's not attractive." "Right. Because being suspicious of my wife's sudden influx of gifts was the real problem here." That afternoon, I was scrolling through social media during my lunch break when I saw it. Ethan Turner's Instagram post, the same sapphire necklace, photographed against what looked like expensive leather furniture. The caption read, "For someone special." I stared at the screen until the image burned into my retinas. The background showed a lakeside view through floor-to-ceiling windows, the kind of place Iris and I could never afford on a mechanic's salary. I took a screenshot and texted it to Iris. "Funny coincidence, huh?" Her reply came back fast. "It's just a joke. Don't be so insecure." Insecure. That was her new favorite word for me. Ethan Turner was a real estate agent who'd moved to Riverside 2 years ago. He had the kind of smile that sold houses and apparently charmed wives. His Tesla was always spotless, his hair always perfect, and his Instagram feed was a carefully curated display of success. I'd worked on his car once. Minor fender-bender repair. He'd spent the entire time name-dropping clients and checking his phone. The kind of guy who tipped in business cards instead of cash. That evening, I tried bringing up the necklace again. "Iris, about that post—" "What post?" She was scrolling through legal documents, not looking at me. "The one with your necklace. Same exact piece." "Kellan, there are probably thousands of necklaces like this. You're seeing patterns that aren't there." But the caption said, "Someone special." Could be his mother, his grandmother, anyone. You're being paranoid. Maybe I was. Maybe small-town life had finally gotten to me, making me suspicious of shadows and coincidences, but the necklace sat on her dresser like a question mark, catching light from the window every morning when I got dressed for work. I started paying attention to things I'd ignored before. Iris's phone always face down now. Her late nights at the office, which seemed to coincide with Ethan's social media posts from various restaurants around town. The way she'd started dressing differently, sharper, more polished, like she was auditioning for a different life. 3 days later, I found another piece of the puzzle. Chloe had left her laptop open on the kitchen table, logged into her Instagram account. I wasn't snooping, not exactly, but Ethan's profile was right there in her recent searches. I clicked through his photos, looking for anything that might explain the necklace coincidence. Most of his posts were standard real estate agent material, sold signs, happy clients, motivational quotes about success. But then I found it. A photo from 2 weeks ago, taken at Romano's, the nicest restaurant in town. The image showed a wine glass and a woman's hand reaching for it. On her wrist was a bracelet I recognized. Iris had worn it to her law firm's holiday party last year. The timestamp showed 8:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. The same Tuesday, Iris had texted me that she was working late on a difficult case. I screenshot that one too. "You're losing your mind," Iris said when I showed her the Romano's photo. "That could be anyone's bracelet. Do you know how many women own silver jewelry?" We were standing in our kitchen, morning coffee growing cold between us. She was dressed for court in a navy suit I'd never seen before, her hair pulled back in a way that made her look like a stranger. "The timestamp, Iris. You were supposed to be at the office." I was at the office. We ordered takeout from Romano's. Jennifer posted that photo. She was showing off her manicure. Jennifer was Iris's paralegal, a woman I'd met exactly twice in 5 years of marriage. Iris had an explanation for everything, delivered with the kind of confidence that made me question my own memory. "You're being obsessive," Chloe chimed in from the doorway. At 17, she had her mother's sharp tongue and her generation's complete faith in social media as reality. "Dad, you're literally stalking people online. It's weird." "I'm not stalking anyone. I'm trying to understand." "Understand what? That Mom has a life outside this house? That she's successful and people give her nice things?" Iris smiled at our daughter with genuine warmth, the kind of expression she used to save for me. "Thank you, honey. At least someone in this family trusts me." I felt like I was drowning in their certainty. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe small-town paranoia had finally gotten its hooks in me, turning innocent coincidences into evidence of betrayal. But that afternoon, while changing the oil in Mrs. Patterson's Buick, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something obvious. I pulled out my phone and looked at Ethan's Instagram again, scrolling through weeks of posts. The pattern was subtle, but consistent. Photos of expensive meals, always for two but showing only one place setting. Shots of wine glasses with mysterious hands reaching into frame. Captions about special moments, and someone who makes life better. I started taking notes, matching timestamps to Iris's supposed work schedule. The correlation was unsettling. Every late night at the office seemed to coincide with one of Ethan's romantic posts. That evening, Riverside held its annual fundraiser for the volunteer fire department. The whole town showed up, cramming into the high school gymnasium to bid on donated goods and pretend we were still a thriving community. Iris wore the sapphire necklace. I watched her work the room like the lawyer she was, shaking hands and making small talk with potential clients. She was good at it, charming, professional, memorable. The kind of woman who had outgrown a mechanic husband and a town slowly fading into irrelevance. Ethan arrived fashionably late, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. He made a beeline for the auction tables, bidding aggressively on a weekend getaway package to some lakeside resort. I was nursing a beer by the basketball hoop when I saw them together. Nothing obvious, just a brief conversation by the bake sale table. But I watched Iris touch her necklace while they talked, an unconscious gesture that made my stomach clench. "You're staring," said Mac McIntyre, sliding up beside me with 2 fresh beers. Mac owned the Rusty Anchor, the bar where I spent most Friday nights. He was ex-Boston PD, retired to Riverside after taking a bullet in the line of duty. If anyone understood paranoia, it was Mac. "Just people watching," I said, accepting the beer. "People watching or wife watching?" I didn't answer, but Mac had always been good at reading silence. "You want some advice from an old cop? If something feels wrong, it usually is. But if you're going to investigate, do it smart. Evidence, not emotions." "I'm not investigating anything." "Sure you're not." Mac clinked his bottle against mine. "Just remember, in my experience, the truth usually hurts. Make sure you're ready for whatever you find." The auction ended with Ethan winning the lakeside getaway. He accepted the certificate with a grin that made my teeth ache. thanking the crowd for supporting such a worthy cause. On the drive home, Iris was unusually quiet. "Nice event," I said, testing the waters. Good turnout. That Turner guy seemed to enjoy himself. Big spender." Iris glanced at me sharply. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just an observation. Ethan's a successful businessman. He can afford to support local causes." "Ethan, huh? First name basis now?" "Kellan, stop. You're doing it again." "Doing what?" "Being suspicious of everyone and everything. It's exhausting." We drove the rest of the way in silence, the sapphire necklace catching streetlight through the passenger window. That night, I lay awake thinking about Mac's words. Evidence, not emotions. If I was going crazy, at least I could be systematic about it. I started with Iris's phone bill, which I could access through our shared account. The records showed dozens of calls to a number I didn't recognize, usually during business hours, but sometimes late at night. The calls had started 3 months ago and were getting more frequent. A reverse lookup revealed the number belonged to Ethan Turner. I screenshot the phone records and saved them to a folder on my laptop. If I was building a case, I might as well organize it properly. The next piece came by accident. Iris had left her laptop open on the kitchen table, logged into her email. I wasn't snooping. I was looking for the insurance agent's contact information after a minor fender bender, but her inbox was right there. Most of the messages were work-related, but one subject line caught my attention. Tonight was perfect. I clicked before I could stop myself. The email was from Ethan, sent at 11:43 p.m. the previous Tuesday. Just 4 words, but they hit me like a punch to the gut. I scrolled down to see Iris's reply, sent 20 minutes later. "Can't wait for next time." My hands were shaking as I screenshot the exchange. This wasn't paranoia anymore. This was evidence. I spent the next week in a strange kind of limbo, going through the motions of normal life while my marriage crumbled in slow motion. Iris continued her late nights and mysterious phone calls. Chloe continued treating me like an embarrassing relic. And I continued collecting evidence like a man building his own coffin. The insurance policy appeared on a Thursday. I was organizing our financial documents for tax season when I found it. A life insurance policy on me, recently updated with Iris as the sole beneficiary. The coverage had been doubled, and the signature at the bottom looked like mine but felt wrong somehow. I compared it to other documents I'd signed recently. The handwriting was close but not perfect, like someone had practiced my signature but couldn't quite nail the pressure and flow. I'd never signed this policy update. That realization should have terrified me, but instead it felt like validation. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. I was married to a woman who was planning for my absence. I photographed every page of the policy and added it to my growing evidence folder. Then I drove to the Rusty Anchor, where Mac was restocking the bar for the evening crowd. "You look like someone who's seen a ghost," he said, not looking up from the beer taps. "Maybe I have." I slid onto a bar stool and ordered whiskey, neat. Mac poured the drink and studied my face. "You want to talk about it?" I pulled out my phone and showed him the insurance policy photo. Mac's expression darkened as he scrolled through the images. "When did you sign this?" "I didn't." "You sure?" "Mac, I'm a mechanic. I read every word of every contract. I would remember doubling my life insurance." Mac handed back the phone. "What else you got?" I showed him everything. The phone records, the emails, the Instagram posts, the timeline of lies. Mac listened without interruption, his cop instincts taking over. "This is solid circumstantial evidence," he said finally. "Affair, financial motive, opportunity. But circumstantial won't hold up in court if she's smart." "I'm not looking for court. I'm looking for the truth. Sometimes they're the same thing. Sometimes they're not." Mac refilled my glass. "Question is, what are you going to do with this information?" I didn't have an answer yet, but I was starting to get ideas. The next morning, I did something I'd never done before. I followed my wife. Iris left the house at 8:30, claiming she had depositions all day. Instead of heading toward her law office downtown, she drove to the Riverside Mall. I parked 3 spaces away and watched her enter Margo's boutique. Margo Dean was Iris's best friend from high school, a woman who'd never met a piece of gossip she couldn't weaponize. She owned a small clothing store that somehow stayed profitable despite having no visible customers. I waited 20 minutes before following them inside. The store was empty except for Iris and Margo, who were huddled over a tablet at the checkout counter. "Just have to be careful with the timing," Margo was saying as I pretended to browse the men's section. "If he gets suspicious—" "He's already suspicious," Iris interrupted. "But he can't prove anything." "What about the necklace? That was sloppy." "It was a gift, from my sister. That's my story and I'm sticking to it." They laughed like conspirators, which I suppose they were. I bought a tie I didn't need and left before they noticed me. But I'd heard enough to understand that this went deeper than just an affair. Margo was involved, helping Iris cover her tracks. That afternoon, I made a decision that would change everything. I drove to Ethan's office, a glass-fronted space in the town's only remaining professional building. Through the window, I could see him on the phone, gesturing dramatically at someone who probably couldn't see him. I didn't go inside. Instead, I walked around to the parking lot and found his Tesla, gleaming white under the afternoon sun. I didn't key it. I didn't slash the tires. I didn't do anything that would leave evidence or get me arrested. I just happened to be backing out of a nearby parking space when my truck's trailer hitch connected with his driver's side door. Metal scraped against metal with a sound like fingernails on a chalkboard. Ethan came running out of his office, face red with indignation. "What the hell, man? You just hit my car!" I got out of my truck and examined the damage with professional interest. "Looks like a scrape. Should buff right out." "Should buff out? This is a $40,000 car." "Should have bought American," I said, pulling out my insurance card. "Less expensive to fix." Ethan tried to intimidate me with threats about lawyers and lawsuits, but I'd been dealing with angry customers for 20 years. I let him vent while I took photos of the damage for the insurance claim. "This isn't over," he said as I climbed back into my truck. "Probably not," I agreed. "But it's a start." That evening, Iris was waiting for me when I got home. "Ethan called me," she said without preamble. "He says you hit his car on purpose." "Ethan called you? Why would he do that?" The question hung in the air between us. Iris realized her mistake immediately, but it was too late to take it back. He called the shop. You weren't there, so he called the house." "How did he get our home number?" The phone book?" "We're not in the phone book, Iris. Haven't been for 3 years." She stared at me, her lawyer's mind working through the implications of her slip-up. For the first time in months, I saw uncertainty in her eyes. "I can explain," she said finally. "I'm sure you can. You're good at explanations." I walked past her toward the stairs, leaving her standing in the hallway with her mouth open. In our bedroom, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the sapphire necklace on her dresser. Tomorrow, I decided, I was going to stop being the victim of this story. Tomorrow, I was going to start fighting back. The jewelry store was called Riverside Gems, which was optimistic considering Riverside barely had enough gems to fill a small display case, but it was the only place in town that sold expensive jewelry, which made it the obvious starting point for my investigation. The owner, Mrs. Chen, had been cutting and polishing stones since before I was born. She remembered every sale, every customer, every story behind every purchase. "The sapphire necklace," I said, showing her a photo from Iris's Instagram. "Do you remember selling this?" Mrs. Chen studied the image through her jeweler's loupe. "Oh yes, beautiful piece. Took me 3 weeks to find the right stones." "Who bought it?" "That young man with the fancy car. Turner, I think. He comes in every month, always buying gifts. Every month? Regular as clockwork. Usually earrings or bracelets. This was his first necklace purchase. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. How long has he been a customer? About 6 months now. Always pays cash, always very particular about the presentation. 6 months. That was when Iris had started working late, started dressing differently, started treating me like an inconvenience. I thanked Mrs. Chen and drove home with my head spinning. This wasn't a recent affair. It was a sustained relationship with its own rhythm and traditions. That evening, I was working late in the garage when Margo Dean appeared in my doorway. She was dressed for a night out, all sharp angles and expensive perfume. "We need to talk," she said. I wiped my hands on a shop rag and gestured toward the office. Margo perched on the edge of my desk like she owned the place. "Iris is worried about you," she began. "Your behavior lately has been concerning." "My behavior?" "The paranoia, the accusations, following her around town. It's not healthy, Kellan." "What's not healthy is my wife lying to me." Margo sighed dramatically. "Marriage is complicated. Sometimes people need space to figure things out." "Space? Is that what we're calling it?" "Look, I'm going to be straight with you. Iris is unhappy, has been for a while. She's young, successful, ambitious. Maybe she's outgrown this." Margo gestured around the garage with obvious distaste. "This? Small-town life, a mechanic husband, the whole blue-collar routine." Her words hit like physical blows, but I kept my expression neutral. "And you're here to what, exactly? Give me relationship advice?" "I'm here to offer you a way out that doesn't end with everyone getting hurt." Margo opened her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. "Divorce papers, already filled out. Sign them, let Iris keep the house and her dignity, and this all goes away quietly." I didn't touch the envelope. "What's in it for you, Margo?" "I'm looking out for my friend." "Right, and if I don't sign?" Her smile turned predatory. "Then things get complicated. Iris is a lawyer, Kellan. She knows how to make your life very difficult. Harassment charges, restraining orders, custody battles. You really want to go down that road?" I stared at her for a long moment, pieces clicking into place in my mind. "How long have you known?" "Known what?" "About the affair, about Ethan, about whatever game you and Iris are playing." Margo's composure slipped for just a second. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you don't." I leaned back in my chair. "You know what's funny? I've been so focused on Iris and Ethan that I never stopped to wonder who was pulling the strings." "Kellan!" "It's you, isn't it? This whole thing was your idea." Margo stood up quickly, smoothing her skirt. "You're being ridiculous." "Am I?" "Let me guess. You introduced them. Probably at one of your little boutique events. Iris mentioned she was feeling trapped, unfulfilled, and you saw an opportunity. I think this conversation is over." "Oh, we're just getting started." I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recorder app. See, the thing about small towns is that everyone talks, and when you've lived here as long as I have, you hear things. Margo went very still. "Like how your boutique should have gone out of business years ago, but somehow you always have just enough money to keep the lights on, or how you seem to know everyone's secrets before they happen." "What are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. You make your living off other people's misery. Divorces, affairs, family feuds. They're all profit opportunities for someone who knows how to work the angles." Margo's mask finally dropped completely. "You think you're so smart, don't you? The noble mechanic, betrayed by his ambitious wife. It's almost poetic." "So I'm right." "You're right about some things, wrong about others." She sat back down, suddenly relaxed. "Yes, I introduced them. Yes, I encouraged Iris to explore her options. But you want to know the real reason?" I waited. 5 years ago, you turned down my loan application. Remember that? I needed 20,000 to expand the boutique, and you and your little bank friends decided I wasn't a good investment. That wasn't my decision. I just did the books. You recommended against it. I saw the paperwork. Margot's voice turned venomous. So I decided to show you what a bad investment really looks like. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. You've been planning this for 5 years? Not planning, waiting, for the right opportunity, the right pressure points. Iris was always going to outgrow you, Kellan. I just helped speed up the process. I stared at her, amazed by the casual cruelty in her voice. And Ethan? A useful idiot with money and no sense. Perfect for what I needed. Which was what exactly? Margo smiled. To destroy your marriage, your reputation, and your business? To leave you with nothing while Iris walks away with everything, including a nice life insurance payout eventually? The threat was clear, and suddenly the forged insurance policy made perfect sense. You're insane. I'm thorough. Margo stood up again, smoothing her skirt. The divorce papers are still on the table, Kellan. Sign them, disappear quietly, and maybe you get to keep breathing. Fight this, and I promise you'll regret it. She walked toward the door, then paused. Oh, and that little recording you just made? Maine is a 2-party consent state, inadmissible in court and probably a felony on your part. But you knew that, right? Being so smart and all. After she left, I sat in the silence of my garage, surrounded by the tools and machinery that represented everything I'd built in this town. Margo was right about one thing. I was in over my head. But she was wrong about something else. I wasn't planning to fight this in court. I spent that night planning like a general preparing for war. Margo thought she held all the cards, but she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd revealed the scope of her ambition. This wasn't just about destroying my marriage. It was about destroying me completely, which meant I had nothing left to lose. The next morning, I drove to the bank where I'd worked part-time doing bookkeeping 5 years ago. My old boss, Jim Patterson, was still the loan officer who'd ultimately rejected Margo's application. Kellan, haven't seen you in months. How's the garage business? Complicated, I said, settling into the chair across from his desk. Jim, I need to ask you about something from a few years back. Margo Dean's loan application. Jim's expression grew cautious. You know I can't discuss customer information. She's not a customer anymore, and she's been telling people I recommended against her loan. Jim frowned. That's not accurate. You flagged some irregularities in her financial statements, but the decision was mine. Her debt-to-income ratio was completely unrealistic. What kind of irregularities? Jim glanced around the empty office, then leaned forward. Between you and me? Her books were creative. Income inflated, expenses minimized, mysterious cash deposits that didn't match her business model. Mysterious how? The kind of cash flow that suggests unreported income. We suspected she was running some kind of side business, but we couldn't prove it. I thanked Jim and left with a new understanding of Margo's operation. She wasn't just a gossip. She was running some kind of informal blackmail or information brokerage scheme. My next stop was the town hall, where public records lived in filing cabinets that smelled like dust and disappointment. I spent 2 hours digging through property transfers, business licenses, and court filings. The pattern that emerged was fascinating. Over the past 5 years, Margo had been involved in a dozen different business deals, always as a silent partner or consultant. Divorce settlements, where she'd somehow acquired property. Estate sales where she'd bought valuable items for pennies on the dollar. Business partnerships that ended with her former partners leaving town. Margo Dean wasn't just destroying my marriage for revenge. She was a professional predator who'd turned personal destruction into a business model. Armed with this knowledge, I drove to Ethan's lakeside rental house. His Tesla was in the driveway, which meant he was home. Perfect. I didn't knock. Instead, I used the spare key that was hidden under the fake rock by the front door, The same hiding spot every amateur burglar in Maine knew to check first. The house was exactly what I'd expected: expensive furniture, minimal personality, everything arranged for maximum Instagram impact. I found what I was looking for in the bedroom: a shoebox full of receipts, photos, and what appeared to be a detailed timeline of his relationship with Iris. Ethan was methodical. I had to give him that. Every date, every gift, every hotel room was documented with receipts and photos. There were even notes about Iris's preferences, her schedule, her emotional state. But the most interesting discovery was a burner phone hidden in his sock drawer, loaded with text messages that would make a divorce lawyer salivate. I photographed everything, then put it all back exactly as I'd found it. But I left something behind: the sapphire necklace placed carefully on his pillow with a note that read, "For someone special. Hope she was worth it." Then I went outside and did something that felt incredibly satisfying. I let the air out of all 4 tires on his Tesla. Not slashed, deflated. Annoying, but not criminal. The kind of thing that would ruin his day without landing me in jail. As I drove away, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: control. That evening, Iris was waiting for me with her phone in her hand. "Ethan says someone broke into his house." "That's terrible. Did they take anything?" "He found your wife's necklace on his bed." The slip was even more obvious this time. Iris realized it immediately, her face going pale. "I mean, the necklace, the one like mine." "The one that's identical to yours? What are the odds?" Iris set down her phone and looked at me with something approaching respect. "How long have you known?" "About the affair?" "Weeks. About Margo's involvement?" "Since yesterday." "Margo's not involved in anything." "Sure she isn't, just like you're not planning to collect on my life insurance." Iris went very still. "What are you talking about?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the forged policy documents. "Recognize the signature? Because I sure don't." For the first time since this whole mess started, Iris looked genuinely frightened. "Kellan, I can explain." "I'm sure you can. You're good at explanations. But I'm done listening." I walked past her toward the stairs, but she grabbed my arm. "Wait, please. Let me tell you what really happened." I turned back, curious despite myself. "Margo said you'd never give me a divorce, that you'd fight for everything, make it ugly, turn the whole town against me." "So you decided to make me disappear instead?" "No. The insurance thing was Margo's idea. She said it was just leverage, something to make you more cooperative." "And you believed her?" Iris's silence was answer enough. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "You're going to pack a bag and stay somewhere else tonight. Tomorrow, we're going to have a conversation about how this ends. But it ends on my terms, not Margo's." "Kellan, I'm not the same man I was a month ago, Iris. Margo wanted to destroy me, but all she did was show me what I'm capable of when I stop playing nice." Iris stared at me like she was seeing a stranger, which, I suppose, she was. After she left, I sat in our empty house and planned the final phase of my counterattack. Margo thought she was playing chess while I played checkers. Tomorrow, she was going to learn the difference between being smart and being wise. The next morning brought the kind of gray Maine weather that matched my mood perfectly. I'd spent the night in my garage, fine-tuning the plan that would end this mess once and for all. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Meet us at the Lakeside Overlook, 8 p.m., time to settle this." I knew it was from Margo. She'd gathered her allies for what she thought would be the final battle. Iris, Ethan, probably Chloe too, all united against the paranoid mechanic who'd finally lost his mind. They had no idea what was coming. I spent the day making preparations. First, I visited Mac at the Rusty Anchor. "You look like a man with a plan," he said, polishing glasses behind the bar. "Something like that." I slid a USB drive across the bar. "Insurance policy. If something happens to me tonight, give this to the state police." Mac pocketed the drive without looking at it. You sure about this, Kellan? I'm sure about a lot of things now. Just remember, revenge is a dish best served cold, but it's still poison if you eat too much of it. Good thing I'm not planning to eat it. My next stop was the electronics store, where I bought a small wireless camera and a portable streaming device, the kind of equipment teenagers used for their social media broadcasts. If Margo wanted a showdown, she was going to get one, but it was going to be on my terms, with the whole town watching. At 7:45 p.m., I drove to the Lakeside Overlook, a scenic spot where tourists used to stop before the economy collapsed and the tourists stopped coming. Now it was just a cracked parking area with a view of dark water and distant lights. 3 cars were already there: Iris's sedan, Ethan's Tesla with 4 brand new tires, and Margo's SUV. They were standing in a group near the safety railing, backlit by the setting sun like actors in a badly written drama. I parked my truck and activated the streaming setup, broadcasting live to the Riverside Community Facebook group, all 3,847 members who had nothing better to do on a Tuesday night than watch small-town drama unfold in real time. "Kellan," Iris called as I approached. "Thank you for coming. Wouldn't miss it." I glanced at the assembled group. Interesting guest list. Chloe was there too, filming everything on her phone with the dedication of a war correspondent. At 17, she'd already mastered the art of turning family dysfunction into social media content. "Dad, you need to stop this," she said without looking up from her screen. "You're embarrassing yourself." "Probably, but that's nothing new." Margo stepped forward, playing the role of reasonable mediator. "Kellan, we're all here because we care about you. This paranoia, this obsessive behavior, it's not healthy." "You're right. It's not healthy to be paranoid when people are actually conspiring against you." "No one's conspiring." "Really? Then explain this." I pulled out my phone and played the audio recording from our conversation in my garage. Margo's voice filled the evening air, cold and calculating as she described her 5-year plan for revenge. The group went silent. Even Chloe stopped filming. "That recording is illegal," Margo said finally. "Probably, but it's also true." Ethan stepped forward, trying to salvage the situation. "Look, man, I know this is awkward, but we're all adults here. These things happen." "These things?" I looked at him with genuine curiosity. "You mean affairs? Or elaborate revenge schemes involving forged insurance documents?" "I don't know anything about insurance documents." "Sure you don't." I pulled out my phone again and showed him photos of his hidden shoebox. "Nice record keeping, by the way. Very thorough." Ethan's face went pale. "You broke into my house. I borrowed your spare key. There's a difference. That's still breaking and entering. Call the cops. I'll wait." The challenge hung in the air. Everyone knew that involving law enforcement would expose secrets that none of them wanted revealed. Iris finally spoke up. "What do you want, Kellan?" "I want the truth. All of it. On the record." "What record? There's no one here but us." I smiled and pointed to my phone, where the Facebook Live viewer count had climbed to over 200. "Actually, we have quite an audience." The group turned to stare at my phone in horror. The comments were scrolling by too fast to read, but I caught glimpses. "Holy cow! Is this really happening? Better than Netflix. You're live streaming this?" Iris's lawyer instincts kicked in. "That's a violation of privacy. We're in a public place. No expectation of privacy." Margo lunged for my phone, but I stepped back easily. Now, the show's just getting started." "Turn it off," Ethan demanded. "Or what? You'll deflate my tires?" The viewer count hit 500. Half the town was watching now, sharing the stream and calling their neighbors. This was the biggest thing to happen in Riverside since the paper mill closed. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, addressing the camera as much as the group. "Everyone's going to tell the truth, starting with Margo. I'm not saying anything. That's fine. I'll say it for you. I turned to face the camera directly. Margo Dean has been running a blackmail operation out of her boutique for years. She destroys marriages and families for profit, then buys up the pieces when people are desperate to leave town. That's slander! It's documentation. I have 5 years of public records showing your pattern of predatory behavior. The viewer count hit 800. Comments were flooding in from people who'd apparently had their own encounters with Margo over the years. And Ethan here isn't just having an affair with my wife. He's been documenting everything, probably planning his own blackmail scheme down the road. Ethan tried to protest, but I kept talking. As for Iris, my loving wife forged my signature on a life insurance policy, doubling the payout and making herself the sole beneficiary. Guess she was planning for my early retirement. The group was backing away from me now, finally understanding that I wasn't the same man they'd been manipulating for months. The beautiful thing about small towns, I continued, is that everyone knows everyone. And now everyone knows everything. The viewer count hit 1,200. The entire town was watching, along with friends and relatives from surrounding communities. This stream would be saved, shared, and remembered long after the participants were gone. Margo made one last, desperate play. None of this proves anything. It's all speculation and illegal recordings. You're right, I said, but it doesn't matter. What do you mean? I gestured toward my phone. I mean that in a town this size, reputation is everything, and all of your reputations just got flushed down the drain on live television. The truth of that statement hit them like a physical blow. Iris's legal career, Ethan's real estate business, Margo's social standing, all of it depended on community trust that had just evaporated in real time. You've ruined us, Iris whispered. No, I said. I've exposed you. There's a difference. Ethan tried one last intimidation tactic, stepping closer with his chest puffed out. You think you're so smart. I didn't hit him. I didn't need to. I just stood there, completely calm, while he postured and threatened. Go ahead, I said quietly. Assault me on livestream. See how that works out for you. Ethan deflated like his tires had the night before. The confrontation was over. They all knew it, I knew it, and 1,500 viewers knew it too. I picked up my phone and addressed the camera one final time. This is Kellan Brooks, signing off from the Riverside Overlook. Thanks for watching, folks. Remember, in small towns, the truth always comes out eventually. Sometimes it just needs a little help. I ended the stream and pocketed my phone. The group stood in stunned silence, their carefully constructed lies crumbling around them like the town's abandoned buildings. What happens now? Chloe asked, her teenage confidence finally cracking. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, for the first time in months. She was 17, confused, and caught between parents who'd forgotten how to be adults. Now you decide who you want to be, I told her, independent of all this mess. I turned and walked back to my truck, leaving them standing in the gathering darkness. Behind me, I could hear urgent whispered conversations, probably planning damage control that would never work. The town had seen everything. The internet had recorded everything. And tomorrow, everyone in Riverside would wake up knowing exactly who Margo Dean, Ethan Turner, and Iris Brooks really were. As for me, I drove home to an empty house, opened a beer, and sat in my garage surrounded by the tools and machinery that had never lied to me. My phone buzzed with notifications, friend requests, messages, interview requests from regional news outlets. The story was spreading beyond Riverside now, taking on a life of its own. I turned off the phone and finished my beer in blessed silence. They'd wanted a villain in their little drama. Too bad for them. I'd turned out to be pretty good at it. Outside, Riverside slept fitfully, full of new secrets and old gossip. But for the first time in months, I slept peacefully. The truth, as it turned out, was the best revenge of all.